Sorry, I had to unmute. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Founder Session here at Sweden Innovation Days. So happy to see that so many of you could join, and I'm really excited for today's topic. My name is Cathrin Johansson, and when I'm not hosting Founder Sessions here at Sweden Innovation Days, I work for a non-profit organization called Ignite Sweden. And at Ignite, we have only one mission, and that is to bring more business to more startups. And we do so by igniting startup corporate collaboration. And actually, during Sweden Innovation Days, we have been facilitating close to 500 meetings between more than 250 impact startups and scale-ups and 79 corporate organizations, so that they can explore how to collaborate to reach the global goals. But enough about me and enough about Ignite. It's time to introduce our today's guest, founder at WA3RM, Thomas Parker. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Cathrin, and thanks for having me, and thanks for this great event, which has been really useful.
Oh, thank you. I know that you also were part of the matchmaking, right? So I hope you had some really good meetings there.
Indeed.
Yeah, and I know that I've been following you for a while, and when I prepared for this session, there is no doubt that you are a scale-up that's all in for real impact. And when we say real, it's like huge impact. So can you please tell us about WA3RM? When was it founded, and what is it you're actually doing?
Yeah, I'd love to, of course. So we started out 6.5 years ago. We spun ourselves out of the European Spallation Source, CSS, which is a big science facility. And our job there was to make that facility sustainable with an energy concept called responsible, renewable, recyclable. And by the way, that's why there's a 3R in our name, which is a bit annoying, but we don't pronounce it. It's just called WA3RM, but that's from there. And what happened was that we got this done on time and on budget, I want to add, just because it's big science and that's not always the case. And then we realized that we really had to bring this out to industry, because it became a hit in big science, but we just saw that we could do more good by moving on to others. So that's what we did, and that's been our mission since then.
That's cool. And how do you do that, to be more specific?
What we basically do is it's the recyclable part of the 3R, and so and at ESS it was recycling waste heat, and it's low grade waste heat. So it's not useful for a lot of other things, and we found that you could use that for things like greenhouses and fish farms, and also other forms of food production. And so what we do is we go out to industries and we match up their waste streams, with particularly heat, with possible uses, and then we develop those as new businesses in a symbiosis.
Yeah, because if I understand the story right, you actually saw the potential business case, and from there was like we need to do this moment, or like
exactly that. So because at ESS, of course, they had no budget to start building greenhouses or whatever. So we needed to show that by giving people access to the waste heat, there was a business case for that, so that people, if you let people have access, then they would come. And we worked together with some leading Dutch greenhouse growers, and put together a strong business case. And we just looked at it and said, this is for real, and the impact is quite significant, because what you're doing is you're just taking something on an industrial scale that uses fossil fuels to heat, and you replace that with waste heat. So you just take out all that impact. And also it's a good it's a good case because that fuel costs money, and it's actually their biggest cost item.
Yeah, and even with electrification of the industry, this will still be a resource, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, it's increasing because what we see is, I mean, basically, just because of physics, all energy use, industry, your electricity production, all energy becomes heat eventually. So there's just huge amounts of waste heat. But since there's so much is combustion of fossil fuels for industry and energy, then there's lots of high grade waste heat because you get waste. It's pretty high temperature at that point. But when we see with electrification, is you still need the energy for your industrial process or whatever, but that comes out as low grade waste heat. And we also see digitalization where these data centers are growing up like mushrooms in a forest, and they use lots of energy, but they need to cool that. And of course, they don't like to run there. It's just like a particle accelerator at ESS. They like to cool that at fairly low temperatures.
Yeah, so I actually visited a mining facility for Bitcoin back in 2013, and that was mind-blowing. How the waste heat and just imagining all of the data centers and actually how much heat that is produced. But I mean, we often hear about working towards net zero, but you talk about actually going industry beyond zero. And can you please elaborate on that?
Yes. And that goes back again to the whole program, responsible, renewable, recyclable. And what we do when we go to industry is we offer them a really easy first step in their travel towards sustainability and net zero and all that with recycling the waste heat. Because really the industry doesn't, we do all the investments, the industry has to do a little work in terms of their own systems, how to connect, but really quite small, and so it's a really easy step for them, and that counts. If you're recycling waste heat, that's a benefit. But then when they take the more difficult steps, they move to renewable energy and renewable raw materials and things like that, which we can help them a little less with, but they will need to do. We still recycle the waste heat because we can work with the low grade waste heat when they're all electrified and stuff. We're still there. And so then if they get rid of all their other impacts, and many are doing serious steps in that direction and will eventually succeed, we'll still be there recycling the waste heat. And that, at that point, they go to become a net sink.
Yeah, okay. So listen up, everyone that's in charge of sustainability agendas or sustainability strategies. It's not only net zero we're looking for here, it's to go beyond net zero. And if you didn't know it before, now that is the goal. And I just heard you say that you do all the investments, and we will get back to that a little bit later, because I know that you have a really aggressive idea on actually making impact. So you actually found a way to also fund that. And we will talk about that a little bit later. And do you have an estimation of the market size and the potential impact your solution can have?
Yeah. I mean, as I said, the amount of waste heat is really not a limiting factor. There's any amount. And another possible limiting factor would be the amount of investment capital available. But what we see is that there's just so much money that wants to be green. I mean, generally there's a kind of frightening amount of money around. Which with low interest rates, all that, doesn't have a lot of places to go. And that's why we see the valuations on stock markets, which are fantastic if you're in that sort of business, but just high. The investors, financial markets really struggle with finding opportunities to make an impact. And that's where we've sort of stumbled into an opportunity for that. So waste heat is not limiting. Finance
and money don't seem limiting at the moment either. So
the limit is finding the use of waste heat. So we see in Sweden, outside Örebro, a place called Lindesberg, we have our first project, which will be the construction will start. We'll have an inauguration on May 18th. More news on that coming. But it'll be a big shebang there. And sorry, what was the question?
No. So just like about the impact.
Oh,
like,
yeah. We're building it there. It's a greenhouse and a prawn farm. And that's going to be the greenhouse will be 10 hectares.
And that's close to the industry, right? And what kind of industry is it?
This is a pulp and paper industry. It's Billerud Korsnäs. So we dock into their process, and it's really low grade heat. So it's a bit challenging in that respect. But in terms of market limit, that's 10 hectares. We see that we have interest. We have a portfolio of interested industry now, which allows us to build more greenhouses than there is really market for tomatoes, as is the case in Sweden. So the limiting factor is that. Yeah. And then, we can, I think sustainable, giant prawns, there's a market for that. I'll eat them. I'm looking forward to that. Actually, I haven't eaten a giant prawn in years. But that's the limiting factor, is to find the new applications and attract growers, farmers to move to some obscure place in Sweden they've never heard of that has some industry.
Yeah, and when you talk about industry, what is your typical client? Like we heard now about paper and pulp, right? So, but it's heavy industry, if I understand it right. So.
Yes, we like to. I guess it's just our background, and also the way we work is we like to work at scale, and it's really just about that the effort involved to get all of the right people together and working. It needs some scale to pay off, quite simply. So we like to say, rule of thumb, if you're in industry, you have 50 gigawatt hours of heat and it's 50 degrees, then give us a call and we'll be there and build a greenhouse and some other neat stuff.
Okay, so for me that is I don't understand even what you're talking about. So can you give us some kind of example? What is even 50 gigawatt?
That's we're in Sweden. That would be a big pulp paper mill. Will have that steel, heavy industry.
Great.
So yeah.
And I mean, we're all interested in circularity and regenerative industries and so on. But do you have any other examples that you think that we should keep an eye on?
Yeah, this is a sector that's moving quickly, and we had. We've met up with there are two places you should go to follow. One is there's something called Sotenäs Symbios Center, which is actually it's the municipality there that runs, and they're just in the forefront of it's all there. It's a lot about fish, And there's a great group of companies there that have just decided to work together and make things circular. And they're great to follow. I can recommend that. But also we've hooked up really early with a group in Linköping University that have studied industrial symbiosis for years, way before it became it was a bit of an word 20 years ago, and then people forgot, but they didn't. And now it's quite the thing when circular economy is there. So that's those are two hubs in locally here. And through those, we've met up with, there's just so many fantastic businesses going on.
Cool. And I mean, you mentioned Lindesberg as one of your business case that will actually be started to be built in the near future. But speaking of commercialization, like how far have you come? And is there something in the future that you can tell us about?
Yeah, so yes and no. There's lots in the future, and there's little I can tell you. But we have a pipeline of projects and potential projects where we're in discussions with industry, which is it's orders of magnitude more than just what we have in Billerud-Korsnäs, which is we think of as a sizable project. So yeah, as I said, we'll easily fill the local markets for what's produced there in Sweden. So,
that is really interesting, but I see that there is some secrecy going on here, Thomas. I won't push you anymore, but I guess that if we want to follow that, we need to follow you on LinkedIn, like social media, to actually find out what this huge impact project actually is about, right?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best space, and please do follow us. It'd be great. We realize that we need to have a news feed on our webpage as well. We don't yet, but LinkedIn we try to keep.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really, really nice. And I mean, the thing with your case that I think is very, very interesting is the fact that you actually started your own fund to fund these projects. And I mean, it's hard as it is to start a project or to scale a startup, but actually going that way is really, really unusual. So can you please tell us, like, how has that journey been, and was it hard to attract the investors?
Yes, yes and no. We got huge interest. As I say, investors really are, many of them, really searching for understandable high impact projects. And they can connect to what we say is that we take all this waste heat, we reuse that, you use it twice, half the average impact, so good. And they're like, yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah, and the thing that you're doing could never be done like within Series A and Series B and so on, because it's so large investments, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they're all keen, but we three of us have founded WA3RM, and none of us has a background in finance, really. So we have a great advantage that we cover different things. So I'm an engineer by training and sort of into science end of things, and then we have the two others are entrepreneurs and the law, and there's economics, but not really the finance end. But so we've been talking to lots of people, and lots of sort of people have come up and volunteer and just wanted to help us. And so early on, when we say, hey, you're going to have to start a fund. And we're like, what do you mean a fund? We just had no clue. And but now we've actually recruited in as partners in the company, owners as well, a whole group of people who do this, right?
And it's very special. And I think like just doing that and being able to go out to the large industry, telling them like, we can buy a waste heat and we can make investments here, like making it easy to actually make that transition. That's very special.
It is, but you know, it's not like we had this fantastic idea, this is how it's supposed to be done. We just got, you know, we figured out that you know, as we said, we had the business case that this is a moneymaker. But then we had contacts, people on both ends wanting to do things. But then we sort of looked around the room and everyone emptying their pockets, and no one had, you know, 40 million euros to throw at the project, which is what we need for that. And so then it was like, okay, what do we do now? We need to go to finance. And how do you do that?
So it's that's the thing, like you never gave up and now here you are. And last time we spoke, the fund wasn't really closed yet. So I wonder, is there still room for investors?
Yes, there is indeed. And as I said, we have this fantastic interest from industry. So we see great growth opportunity there, but that means that there will be the opportunity for investors will continue to grow as well.
Yeah,
but again, above all, you know, it's great. Industry very welcome, investors also very, very welcome. But most of all, if you have some business that could run on waste heat and want to take that cost item out of your business and willing to relocate to some place you've never heard of, give us a call.
That sounds exciting, right? To relocate to some place you never heard of. I mean, after COVID and everything, we need an adventure, right? So I think that's a really good. Yeah, I think that's a really good proposal. And I also know, like with you, as you said, with your team, you're three very different founders. And when we were talking earlier, I think you said something that really struck me. And it's like, you are so different. And you said that you almost have a little fight every day, right? So
it's every question. It's what, I mean, we just, I mean, I see these things sort of engineering, logic, and then we have, you know, my other co-founder, Michel. He's a lawyer and economist, and he's, you know, that's also logic, but it's different logic at times. And then Frederik, who's really, you know, by sheer will, really born this. This project through our hard times. He's just about relationships. And so you ask a question and we all three look at it and we just have three completely different takes on it every time. The simplest thing. And then we're like, what? No, what are you talking about? But you know, we'd worked together at ESS for a few years at that point. So we knew, you know, I should listen.
You knew that you didn't really get along, and that would be
we're good friends. We're good friends. No, we like each other, which is good. Yeah, no, it's important. But it was like, the first was like, that's just a bizarre. How could you conclude that from this, you know, question? And then, you know, after working together for a while, it's like, okay, I'm hearing this bizarre shit again from my. I need to listen. I need to understand how on earth they could, and also explain to them why I came to a completely different conclusion.
I think that's so interesting, just having that patience. As you say, you're friends, so obviously you need to tolerate each other for differences. But I think that's also like a message to like all the founders out there, that it's not like ice cream and balloons every day and every hour, and you can come really, really far just by accepting that there will be differences and you will find a way, right?
And patience and acceptance, these are not words you would have used to describe the three of us, any of us previously. This is learned.
Yeah. And I want to ask you, like, if with this journey, knowing that what you know now, is there something that you would have done differently?
Yeah, that's a question I ask myself, of course, and it's impossible to say, because there's lots of things that we've done that just crashed and burned, but then years later, something pops up and, oh yeah, we met then, and what about this? And that can be fantastic. So, you know, some of the stuff that didn't work out for some reasons, if we hadn't done it, then we wouldn't have done the other stuff.
Exactly. So that's a good learning. And looking forward, like, what is your growth plan for WA3RM?
So our goal is projects for 10 billion euros. Mm-hmm. So and the portfolio that we have makes that look possible. So
some kind of green unicorn then.
Yeah,
looking
exactly.
Forward. Yeah.
And as importantly, we have our goals are. We like to think people, planet, profit. We're about sustainability. We believe quite strongly, if you're a business in sustainability, you need to be profitable, because losing money is not sustainable as a business. So we really work with all three aspects, and so this goal of is in money, but we have the corresponding goal. I just worked out that if we compare to the project that in Fleury and Lindesberg that we talked about, and sort of just in terms of impact, we say we have projects that replace fossil fuels, because that's what we really want to do. Then that would lead to us getting rid of 1 million tons of CO2 per year. Wow. And so that's a fair chunk. That's like Sweden as a country, the entire country, yeah, their emissions are under 50 million tons.
Wow.
So it's
huge impact. And if I understand it right, it's like more colder countries with heavy industries, so that yes, you're looking to grow in.
Well, you know, selling heat at 40, 50 degrees in some place where it already is 40, 50 degrees, it's a hard sell.
Yeah.
But also we need big industries, as we said, to work with, which fortunately for us are prevalent in a lot of cool climates. But we also need a legal and business climate that works, because for our projects, we're really dependent on being able to have long-term enforceable contracts, because you enter into an industrial symbiosis. You really need to know that there won't be any big change or shakedowns or corruption and that sort of thing. So
stability also.
Yes.
Thomas, we need to wrap it up here now. It has
Time
been
flies.
A pleasure talking to you, and I just want to give a big shout out to like everyone else that's in a colder country, having something to do with heavy industry, knows legal work, or has any interest in working with going beyond net zero. Don't be afraid to reach out to Thomas. You will find his LinkedIn at swedeninnovationdays.se. And if you want to get in contact with me, that's the same. And Thomas, thank you so much. I could go on talking and talking. This is so interesting. And
but we will, but just not here. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So keep up the good work. Thank you for sharing. Thank you everyone for listening in. It has been a pleasure doing these sessions and having you in the audience. So I really hope you get to enjoy the rest of Sweden Innovation Days and stay safe.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.